we go.
And we're off.
Yeah.
Where did our alligator go? He was right up in there somewhere. Probably went up under the alligator. Yeah, a little tiny one over there. Well, I want to welcome you guys aboard. I know everybody's anxious to see alligators. Just to let you know, we have alligators out here. We don't have crocodiles, and there's a reason for that. Alligators can actually, here in Louisiana, we get several weeks of hard freeze every year. When it gets down below about 60 degrees constant temperature, alligators vanish out of here. The big ones anyway do. They go out in the grasses and up in the trees and they dig a hole and they sit in that hole as that cold freezing weather comes in, and they let their body temperature drop all the way down to the point where their heart rate is less than 2 beats a minute. It's a kind of a suspended animation process called brumation. An alligator can actually survive in a frozen pond as long as his nose is above that water line. And that's a process that crocodiles can't do. If a crocodile gets up this far north, once a hard freeze comes in, he's done for. His heart's going to slow down lower and lower because he's cold-blooded, and eventually it's just going to stop. This bird that you see up here on the left on this piece of wood, this is a great blue heron. This is the largest of the wading birds we have out here in the swamp. He's fishing. He's got his eyes peeled on that water, waiting for small fish to get pulled underneath that log, and he's going to spear it with his beak, bring it up in one piece, and swallow it whole. And when it goes down his neck, you can see the imprint of it as it goes down his neck. Last week I went out here, he brought up a 1-pound catfish, and I thought there's no way he's going to swallow. Yeah, it got stuck about halfway, and he had to kind of move around, and finally it went down. You can see the imprint of it as it went down his neck. It's pretty cool. And this is nothing but rainwater from Mississippi. As it comes down and enters into Louisiana, it breaks off into 5 branches heading south to the Gulf of Mexico. One thing I want you guys to notice over here on the right-hand side, you'll see these lily pads along in here. Now, everything is burned out pretty prematurely here because we had Hurricane Isaac with all that salt water, so even the cypress trees are browning out early. But in the summer, when you have these heavy banks of these lily pads up in here, this is an ideal spot for alligators. They like to sit up under the lily pads and up in the grasses. They'll be down around the roots of all the trees, and they wait. Alligators do not hunt for their food, guys. Alligators get in an environment like this, they wait for the food to come to them, and they ambush it. By waiting in an environment like this, sooner or later, something's coming by. A fish, a snake, a raccoon. For a big guy, even a wild boar. And I've seen a 12-foot male take down a 200-pound wild pig right off the bank of the river here. Now, if an alligator gets one good meal a month, he is going to get big and fat, and they can easily survive for over a year without eating at all. Now, over here on the right-hand side, you see how all that vegetation is trampled down in there? The reason I'm slowing down, there's been pigs up in there. They've been eating that vegetation. I don't see any right now. I was hoping maybe there might be one in there, but I don't see any right now. We'll check on the way down. What's happened to the ecosystem now? You notice we've moved now from a flooded meadow down in that marsh with no trees. We're now in the fresh water. Now we're in a flooded forest. Now the water is really low right now. We haven't had any rain for a long time, and the northern wind is pushing the water out. But if you look at the bottom of the trees, you can see where the normal water line is, and normally there's a foot of water back through all of this. Now there's a number of trees that grow in the swamp, and one I want to point out is this big one back here on my right. This is a bald cypress tree. These trees are completely resistant to water rot, termites, and mildew. We had logging operations out here cutting these trees for lumber all the way up until 1960. And because these trees are such an amazing quality to them, that's why all those beautiful buildings in the French Quarter and the Garden District that date back to the early 1700s are still there. This wood is an amazing wood. It does not break down or rot. Now, if you look at the bottom of the tree, you see those things sticking up around the bottom. Those are cypress knees. Those come off the roots of that tree. These trees are related to the redwoods and the sequoias of California, and as they get bigger and heavier, they can become unstable in this soft muck that they're growing in, so the roots shoot up those knees to stabilize the tree. So think of them like fingers on a hand grabbing the soil. It's there to increase the surface area of the roots to grab whatever it can to hold the tree in place as it gets bigger and bigger. Take oil barrels and tie them together to make a pontoon float, and then from that you've just built a little house on it. There's no motor on it, and because there's no motor, it's a free-floating, basically a raft, and when you build one of these things like this, you haul it out by boat. And because of that, you can take one of these out on any public waterway in Louisiana, tie up to a tree, and you can live as long as you want, and you don't pay any property tax. But a lot of people that live way out in the middle through the swamps out here, they have generators on board, and they're just swamp people living off the land, guys, hunting, trapping, cooking meth, fishing, whatever it takes to make a buck. And I don't see a lot of New York bankers trying to retire out here, but it's a way of life for us, you know. Now, I mentioned that we had a 20-foot tidal surge from Katrina over here on the left-hand side. You see behind this bulkhead, there was a 2-bedroom house right there. At the height of the flood of Katrina, that 20 feet of water, that whole house lifted off the foundation, cleared the trees, and it went down the river. It's down in the middle of the marsh where we started, all in one piece, just sitting out there. It's going to rot out there. He had a nice house. He just didn't tie it down to the foundation. Now, these people along here do own their little strip of dry land out here. None of them are insurable. There's no way you can afford insurance on a house out in the swamp. The threat of, you know, flooding is just constant out here. So you just live with it. That's part of the price of living in paradise. You see this birdhouse right here? Anybody know what kind of a birdhouse that is? That's for purple martins. Now that birdhouse has to be at least 10 feet high to get martins to live in it, and that's what you want. There's one in front of that boat, there's one in front of that guy's house over there. You want purple martins because those birds will come out at dusk and each one of them will eat its weight in insects. It's free insecticide. Build the house, they will come. Yeah, you notice the turtles here on the log here. You're going to see these all up and down the swamp here. These are red-eared sliders. That's that same pet turtle a lot of us had as a kid. They have no food value. The alligators don't even want them, so they get a free pass. They'll be all, the big females can get to be up to 2 feet long out here. See right here, this is a shrimp boat, a shallow water shrimping vessel. It's called a Lafitte skiff. That lip off the back of the boat, that was designed out in Lafitte, Louisiana to accommodate and balance out all that rigging. The towers on either side of the cabin there is where he hangs his shrimp nets, called butterfly nets because of their shape. He'll go out in the Gulf of Mexico, just along the coast, find a school of shrimp, drop the towers down and scoop them up and you eat them for dinner. That easy. This house right here, this is what we call Acadian style architecture. And we've been building houses like this since the late 1700s here in South Louisiana. That covered front porch, before electricity and before air conditioning, that covered porch was the most functional part of your home. During the long summer months, you would cook out there to keep the fire and the heat out of the house. You'd sleep out there at night under a net, coolest part of the house. Catch the evening breezes, you hoped it rained, cool things down. My next door neighbor told me when he was growing up, he was 87, he spent about 5 years living in his parents' home when he grew up. Most of it inside the house. The rest of it, he said, I slept with my other 6 brothers and sisters out on the front porch. He said the only time we were allowed in is if he got a hard freeze. Then we could come inside and build a pallet on the floor. The whole middle of the bridge goes straight up, and it still works today just as well as when they put it in here. It was put in here because of the logging operations. When those logging boats came down river stacked with all that wood, they had to have a lift bridge to get all that wood under the highway to take it over to the East River. The East Pearl is where the only town was in the 1800s, called Log Town, only accessible by boat. Largest Cypress mill in the world. There aren't any big boats out here, but if you need the bridge lifted, call the number on the sign at least 4 hours ahead of time, and the tender will come out and lift the bridge for free. This is called Indian Village. Back in the 1680s, the French explorer Bienville came up through the swamp trying to find a way to get over to what he had heard was the Mississippi River. He didn't realize you couldn't get there from here, but what he did find right here on these banks was the Ocolapisa Indians, the local swamp Indians, the furthest eastern outcropping of the Choctaws. Now today, this is the only road down to the swamp from the bridge we went under all the way to above the interstate. So for people that live, work, whatever in the swamp, they leave their cars and their trucks here, get in their boats. A bunch of them are living over here on the right-hand side as we come through here. You can only get to them by boat. Now, because the electric line comes down to the end of the river here, these people formed an LLC, and overhead over here, you see they were able to get the power line run across the river. So this one strip of camps here out in the middle of the swamp do have their own electricity, which, so you can see they all have direct TV, satellite TV, so they can watch their sister on Jerry Springer every Thursday. It's an important part of culture out here. But once you get above that northern bend over there, it's on generator. Now these guys, just like that Acadian style home, people out here, most of these people are out because their house is flooded. They're basically letting them dry out. They've gutted them out, taken all the wet furniture out from Isaac, and they're just letting it dry out. They'll be moving in probably in a couple of weeks. A lot of them will be coming back. one thing you have to understand about here is you are in the middle of the swamp. There's a lot of human activity out here during the day, but at night, you go to bed, you don't leave any food out, and after you go to bed, 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever's out in that swamp behind you is going to be around you. Don't go outside unless you turn the light on and you got a pole in your hand, because you could have an alligator, a snake, a raccoon, a boar, whatever's out in that swamp is going to be rooting around your camp. It's part of life out here. These are catfish lines. Now, everybody has their own colored ribbons so you know whose is whose, and you don't touch another guy's catfish line. That is a big no-no out here. You get in big trouble, you get caught doing that. Now, this snake that we see out here on this branch right over here, you see him right there? That is a water snake. Now, we have over 40 varieties of non-poisonous snakes out here. This is one of them. It's a log. Now, there's a way of telling the poisonous ones from the non-poisonous ones out here. The only way to tell whether a snake is poisonous or not, and that is by the shape of the head. The two poisonous snakes we have out here are the water moccasin and the copperhead. Those are the most common. They have a poison sac at the back of the jaw, and to accommodate that sac, the back of the head, the back of the jaw is much wider than the neck. Now you can see this guy's got a nice narrow head that goes evenly into the neck. That tells you he's a water snake and he's not poisonous.
Okay.
If that neck is wider than the head, like a moccasin, to stay away. Now we are now going down a bayou, guys. Now the word bayou comes from the Choctaw Indian word bayou. It means slow-moving water, and we think of it as a secondary waterway off of a main river channel. Now bayous and swamps are not the same thing. A swamp is an ecosystem. That's what we're in right now. We're in a hardwood swamp. So we're going through the swamp down a bayou, okay? Now bayous don't have to go through swamps either. You get over in West Louisiana, you have beautiful bayous that meander through open fields and meadows, and you have swamps with no waterways in them. This plant with the large leaves on top is called elephant ear. That's part of the colocasia plant family, which includes the taro plant of Hawaii. If you know anybody that uses this stuff for landscaping, a word to the wise, it is toxic. Not poisonous, toxic. If you have to cut it out, don't let the juice get in your mouth. It'll upset your stomach really bad. They say if you cook it, you can eat it. You go first. I know what it'll do when it's raw. Huh? Now the problem we have with wild pigs, you may not realize this, but wild pigs reach sexual maturity at 16 weeks. One female can be responsible in her lifetime for over 1 million offspring. Yeah. You know, it's exponential. She has 10 babies, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. Oh yeah, we hunt them year round. Year round. Now don't grab the plants out there. This is called sawgrass. This stuff has a nasty serrated edge to it that will give you a big paper cut. Plus, of course, we have a lot of spiders out here. They're in all the plants. You just can't see them in here right now. Now, these trees that we're passing on the left here, guys, these trees, it's all right, don't worry. We whack stuff all the time in here. These trees on the left, these are black willow trees. The Indians out here called this their medicine bark. Socrates wrote about it in Greek times. If you have a fever, headaches, aches and pains, you take a piece of the crusty bark off of this tree. Now take this one right here. You take a piece of the bark off of that tree right there, you pull it off, you put it between your cheek and your gum, and you let it sit in there for about 15 minutes, and it will lift your fever. The reason why, the chemical in that bark, this is called Salix nigra, that's the Latin. Salix is salicin. Salicin is the chemical in the bark, actually salicylic acid.
Aspirin.
This is where the Bayer company invented aspirin, from this chemical in this bark. It really does work.
Yep.
And the Indians knew about it out here, so did Socrates, the Greeks did. The black willow and the white willow both have that same property. The weeping willow does not. Just the black and the white willow.
That's why Bayer aspirins, it says Bayer crossways. It's an Indian medicine wheel.
Really?
Yeah, they did that to kind of honor the Indians because that's where they got the recipe.
That I didn't know.
See, there you go.
I'm impressed.
Hey.
Now keep your eyes out. I'm not saying we'll see any, but you might spot a nutria way out in the tree line up in here crawling around. Just look for movement at the ground level.
Just in time for Thanksgiving.
A nutria. Its actual name is a koi poo. It's the third largest rodent in the world. It looks like a giant beaver with a rat tail. They were brought up here from South America by the McElhennys that make Tabasco sauce. They had this idea of starting a fur trade to make fur hats to sell to Russia. when the Cold War hit, trading with Russia stopped, so they didn't know what to do with the things, and I think they just let them out thinking the alligators would eat them. And now they're rampant all through South Louisiana, and they've really seen how bayous change over the years. I know bayous that I knew in here as a kid that aren't here anymore, and since then other bayous have popped up. It's interesting. It's like a living thing. The one bayou will silt up, clog up. The water has to go somewhere. It'll change the path of the water and create a whole new bayou. Now this area would be a prime example of because the water is so shallow here, you wouldn't see too many big alligators up here, but during the summer months we get a lot of the smaller ones back in here. It's too shallow for the big guys to hide, but the small ones can be safe back here, so a female would bring her little babies back in here and they'd kind of hang out here for a couple of years until they were big enough to move out into the river.
Well, they do blend right in, don't they?
There's two over there and there's one here.
Some gators.
Oh, is that a baby?
Oh, that's a dead tree. That's not a... No, that's not a tree. That's a tree that died.
Okay, so I survived the swamp. So until next time, this is Nate Robbins saying, happy trails.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a good time.